What's up, everybody? It's Chad. I'm back again with another episode of Asj Chad Grassy Logic. Today, I'm here with my friend Adrian, aka Cowboy. Thanks for joining me, buddy.
Thanks for having me, bro.
Of course, man. He drove all the way from El Paso to come over here, but I won't let me talk, for him. I'll let him introduce himself. I know some of you have seen him on the show before. He was here last season. He's on again, give us an update and everything that's going on. Plus, he gives us a really good insight of, the Sunland Park area, of course, the Texas residence stuff too. So, Adrian, without further ado, go ahead and introduce yourself, buddy.
My name is Adrian. I also go by Cowboy. I am a bud tender, consumption consultant as well for bud tender education as well as consumer education. I am also a connoisseur and a Texas advocate as well, like you said. And yeah. Pretty much.
Yeah, put on the spot, huh?
Yeah.
First day of school. Well, thank you for joining me, man. Like I said, he drove all the way from El Paso to come over here into the studio to chill with us. At least we have air conditioning.
Definitely.
It is hot outside today.
Yeah.
But that's awesome, man. So for the people that, are just joining us on this season or maybe just on this episode, can you give us a background of, where you got started in cannabis?
Yeah, so as far as, at least for me, I've always been a consumer, kind of off and on from when I was a teenager up until like my early 20s.
Yeah.
As time progressed and stuff like that, I started using a little bit heavier within the past 6-7 years with sort of like my mental health journey, I should say, and as well as some life things that have happened. I've fully leaned into cannabis more as, a medicine. It's definitely helped me out more. Also through just more of like my preferences and kind of like my taste and stuff like that is where I really got into more of like a connoisseur aspect, hash, flower, all that stuff. Everyone calls me Cowboy because I, used to work, I used to sling boots and stuff before slinging hash and stuff. So, so I started to find like the finer things, especially in glass, especially finding, quality stuff in boots. And, that really pushed my kind of glass collecting aspect as well. So it's just a culmination of just a lot of things. But for the most part, as just kind of like everyone here in this community or just, anyone watching, when you start consuming cannabis, most of the time it's either experimenting or it's because of medicinal. And most of the time when it's medicinal, it changes lives.
Yeah.
Sure. I think I can speak for you when I say it's changed your life too. So.
Oh yeah, 100%.
So like it's just one of those things, and because it's helped me, and just what I like to do, I like to help other people too. So that's what essentially brought me more into the cannabis industry and being more of an advocate and really especially fighting for Texas, especially nowadays.
Yeah.
So
yeah. There's a big attack on the hemp stuff in Texas. We'll get more on that later.
Mm-hmm.
We'll have a little conversation on that towards the end of the episode. But, I want to make sure that, we talk about you as well, because, having the perspective of, working in New Mexico, but as a Texas resident is something interesting. And I've brought up a couple points before, to people as well. And people are like, well, how do they do that? And I was like, what do you mean? It's like, how do they pull the Texas residents to New Mexico to work over there? Don't they get paid better in Texas? I was like, no, the minimum wage in Texas is like $7.
It's $7.25. It's still the federal level. Texas, if no one knows, Texas mirrors federal laws a lot.
Yeah, they do.
Very much so.
Yeah, and it's interesting they do that, but Texas is Texas.
Yep.
So yeah, there's that. And then you get onto our side, it's totally different,
Definitely.
like night and day.
Yeah, it totally is. And like it's speaking with other people and, from kind of like outside perspectives of like family, friends or other business owners, they're like, it's like a revolution right now. Like it's so weird. And, I just feel like that's how just America is in general right now. It's just a whole revolution in everywhere that you go. But, we're in a time right now, especially for West Texas, that, being close to New Mexico, in a legal state, being able to work in a legal industry and being able to advocate, against, a lot of the misinformation, a lot of the uneducatedness, knowing what I've learned more in this legal industry. So it's definitely been eye-opening. It's been, it's been a positive journey for me in knowing what I want to do and what kind of like my kind of placehold is in life and whatnot. I know it's getting kind of deep, but that's kind of like where I've really kind of sat with myself, and I'm what I kind of want to do and stuff. So
nice, man. And it's great that we're such a tight niche community that we're all kind of just as one. So it doesn't really like make a difference. And when someone says I'm from El Paso in the area here, I'm like, okay. You're in the New Mexico cannabis industry and you live in El Paso, not weird at all in the area. It's pretty common.
Yeah, and if you're in El Paso, you ask someone, "Oh, we're from New Mexico. You're from?" "Oh, I'm from Chaps." "Oh, okay. Well, I'm from LC." "Oh, okay. Oh, I'm from ABQ." "You are?" It's like it's just the few hours away. It's like, oh, now you're a foreigner, and it's just so weird. So.
And the Albuquerque is totally different from down here.
Oh yeah,
it's a night
and day.
For
sure.
Yeah, from the food to the attitude to the industry itself. I mean, they do make a lot more than Sunland Park, about like $10 million. But it's just impressive what Sunland Park does because there's 17,000 people there, and they're making millions upon millions of dollars in revenue. So that's impressive. It's like $4 to $5 million a month in revenue, which is like, haha, if you're Albuquerque, but if you look at the numbers of how many people live there, that's really, really good, actually.
Yeah, I mean, one city compared to how many cities in one state. So
and I'm from, we'll take a comparative city like Alamogordo, which is about double the size of it. It's like 30,000 people, 35,000 people there. They don't make near as much money as Sunland Park.
No,
not even close.
And that's also, that's one thing to take into consideration is also the demographic as well of what's around that area.
Yeah.
So, for Alamogordo, for example, it's would you say it's rural? I know you're.
It's more of a rural. It was considered rural, especially back in the day too. But its main vein of hub is the Texans coming up to Ruidoso from like El Paso area and that kind of area. So it's like a little feeding hub to that area. So that's where they do get a lot of their business. Because obviously the military members can't use it, but their spouses do. So that's another source of revenue is the spouses from the military base, they use cannabis, trust me. Especially if they live off post or off base, Air Force is called the base.
Oh, yeah.
Especially if they live off base because you're kind of a little more free. If you're on base, I've known people that brave that and like you have some big fucking balls. But yeah, you're not really going to see it that much. But that's the real reason why I advocated for consumption lodges for so long. Is for people like
absolutely.
that. Especially like storage of cannabis and devices and stuff like with the wall locker situation. So that way people like them can go back home and then come back whenever they need to in case they're in a situation like that. Because I've been in that situation, like I wasn't smoking weed, but I lived on base before, when I was in the military, and there's a lot of dumb shit that they have as rules, and you can and can't do a lot of things, so it makes more sense. Like I get it, man.
Yeah.
And so why not provide that to the husbands and wives of the military members, because there are dudes who are dependents.
Yes.
Yes, they call them dependas, but
dependas.
They call them dependopotamuses. That's what it's short for. But yeah, there's some males that are dependents, and so they should benefit from it as well too, just as much as the women, because they all suffer when their people got to deploy.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And El Paso is not short from that either. Like they have a much larger military population there too, and a lot of those spouses, I know some personally, they use cannabis too, and they find a lot of relief in it. And it's a very stressful job being in the military, but being married to someone in the military, that's stressful too.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
There's a lot of worrying involved. But anyway, how crazy has it been in Sunland Park lately?
I mean, it's definitely shifted a little bit, especially with the new additions to a couple other places as well, but not by much. I think just in general, I think we're just seeing it. The market's maturing. There's this happening, there's that's happening. I will say a lot of like Texas stuff I feel is also kind of influencing that a little bit, unfortunately.
I'm sure.
But I could be wrong. But just from my perspective, it's shifting. But I think from it, you're gonna see it anyways. It just is what it is.
Yeah.
But the biggest thing that you can do, and I think it's just kind of business basics. You learn from your stuff, you adapt, you try to change things up, and if not, you're just going to be left to the wolves. I think, we've already seen that a lot too. So
yeah, of course.
This is what it is.
And, Sunland Park can be kind of cannibalistic sometimes.
Oh, very.
And yeah, it is very cannibalistic
it's
down
very
there.
doggy dog.
Oh, it's wolves eating wolves down there. And, it's just a very cutthroat industry, but there it's magnified times 100.
Very.
It's just a very, very dense place. Like I keep telling people, if you ever get a chance, go there. It's wild because you can turn almost 360 degrees and see a dispensary at every direction you look. That's how it is. And to be honest, it's kind of cool to see it at first, But then you start like looking in more and you're like, God, this is crazy. It's so cutthroat. It's so cannibalistic. It's just so fucking nuts.
It's like the Warriors of like the, you know, you got like the Warriors, the what are the Turnbull ECs,
Yeah.
you have like the Moon Runners, then it's like, you know what I mean? And
Yeah,
like
it's
into each dispenser he's like that. It's like who's gonna be that Cyrus that can you count suckers? Like,
can you dig it?
just like that. So yeah.
Oh, that's great, man. No, that's a great way to put it too, you know. But yeah, if you ever get a chance, go down there, you know. And has the consumer changed, you know, because you guys are at an advantage being this close to a legal state because you get more education than the average Texan.
I mean, as a bud tender that takes his job very, very seriously, I would definitely hope so. Just because, at least for me, you know, I always do my due diligence of always educating, you know, against THC percentages, about this, about that, you know, especially when it comes to like, you know, the difference between, you know, resins, distillates, and rosins, you know, or all that stuff. You know, it's just all about doing the due diligence. You know, that is definitely one of my pet peeves, and you know, I do see it. You know, not going to sugarcoat it. You know, it is a pet peeve of mine walking into a dispensary, and when I come in, you know, the first thing I get is, you know, hey, you looking for indica, sativa, hybrid, high THC? And it's like, how about a high first, man?
Mm-hmm.
You know, how are you?
Yeah.
Stuff like that. And, you know, it's just doing you're doing your due diligence and, you know, giving it the college try. Cause, you know, I'm going to say it first and foremost, and every other bud tender that actually does their job correctly, you know, we always get those people that push back, you know, that don't want to hear it, that, you know, they're in their old ways and it's going to happen, but that shouldn't stop you from doing it. Yeah. So, you know, I would really hope so, but, you know, I can't speak for every dispensary. Yeah. But, you know, at least for me and, you know, from what I've seen, you know, with the team that I'm with, you know, we do our due diligence to educate. And a lot of the customers do really appreciate it. We get all our regulars and, you know, we get, you know, that loyal comeback as well. So.
Yeah, and I'm interested, you know, when the day comes, maybe that in 30 or 25 years, you know, when Texas finally legalizes it, how the communities are going to kind of merge and mesh, because there is going to be that meeting of the middle, because we're already there. We're already one community almost, you know. I'm curious to see how that's going to go. I mean, it's going to be a purge in Sunland Park for sure. I'm not going to say be a ghost town, but it's not going to be as profitable as it once was.
I mean, yes and no. Yes and no, and I think that's what also really sets West Texas away from everyone else is, you know, like you said, when Texas does legalize, you know, we're going to be sort of, you know, the pioneers of, you know, really trying to show the rest of Texas, you know, hey, this is how this is how it's done. This is what worked. This is what doesn't work. But on the other hand, it was funny. I was actually having a conversation with actually one of my regulars about this. He says, you know, what's going to happen if well, the rest of Texas legalized? I said, I don't think it's going to be a problem here because, you know, for example, east side of El Paso will really appreciate if, you know, there's a certain dispensary, you know, on that side, but, you know, there's still the West Texas, you know, the Texas ones that are going to be loyal. They're going to go to Sunland Park because it's right next to their house anyways. So, but you never know. Like that's just, you know, that's just me being optimistic. You know, that's just me, you know, looking at it from just, you know, a logical standpoint for, you know, especially how like how our area is just very spread out. Mm-hmm. So it's just, I don't know. But then again, anything could happen. This is what's so crazy about our industry is that it's just completely different from what it's own. And we've seen things happen that I don't think anyone's really ever seen or was able to like account for, in my opinion.
Because, you know, as conservative as Texas likes to, you know, claim they are, they can be pretty fucking liberal. Very, what I mean
very, is, especially in their own ways. Like,
yeah. And, you know, I went to Austin in March and they were very, very liberal with the deltas and even cannabis in general. Like, you know, and I was told throughout the state it's mostly kind of like that right now, especially with like the deltas, you know, and like, you know, the THCAs, you know, because, you know, they have like the biggest freaking cannabis market in the world right now.
I mean, it's kind of forced into it. You know, I can since we're already talking about that. Do you want me to go ahead and lead into that?
Sure, go ahead. Let's do it. Yeah.
So like I'll speak on that. You know, the hemp industry has really gone up because as far as me on the Texas Compassion Use program, I will say it like the TICA program does not. It sucks. Like, I'm just gonna say it. It sucks, and the reason being is because we we don't get flour, we don't get concentrates, we only get, edibles and tinctures.
Yeah.
And, most of them are distillate anyways. Like that, I don't personally consume that, know. And so like, and then another thing too, like compared prices too, me as a med patient getting like only low dosages, which are 100 milligram bags or less, and they're costing triple to quadruple to more than what's on the New Mexico in the market as it is.
Yeah, you can get 500 milligrams medical patient, and really not break the bank.
Yeah, and then in Texas you can buy 100 milligram bag and spend $80 on it.
Jeez.
And I kid you not, and especially the same thing with tincture sometimes. And here's another thing too, in West Texas, we do not have a dispensary that caters to us like San Marcos. I think it's San Marcos, could be wrong. Austin, obviously, but what we would have to do is put in like minimum orders, and I haven't put one in a long time, but I think it's around like 250, minimum, and you have to order that to make it worth it, and that's only like at that point like 3 or 4 bags. And that's also not counting if you've already maxed out your prescription that is like godly none anyways. So for people that need that relief or that don't have that income, stuff like that, it forces them into buying these hemp derived stuff. And I can account for a lot of the majority, I'll say the majority, but a few of the advocates, especially that too, because they are actually the growers that are in that industry doing it correctly. They get correct COAs, they do correct stuff, even though we have a very, not liked government that wants to see it the other way, but, that's what's happened, or at least what I've seen, my perspective. And it's the state doing the minimal stuff, which causes other things that now they're having to deal with. That's the way that I look at it. But yeah. So I can put it. I don't know what else to say.
No. They're fair points and everything. So, thank you so much for the kind of little Texas update and everything. We'll talk about the legislative stuff towards the end of the episode. I just really wanted to kind of get a feel of what's going on in Sunland Park because, it's such an interesting area and there's so much culture that bleeds into both areas that I kind of want to know what's going on. Are those people leaning more towards rosin or are they going towards drinks now? Or is it just straight pre-rolls? That's kind of usually...
It's a culmination of everything. Yeah. It's really hard because you just have your edible users. Carts are going to always reign supreme right now because it's Texas. Those are most convenient. Those are the most that can, be hidden and stuff like that, whatever. But, a lot of people are at least, moving into resin. I think a lot of, people that are chasing those, those more intense kind of like, experiences and stuff. They're starting to figure out that, maybe distillate's not the way to go. And, if they can deal with the smell and stuff, it's, resins are, going to be, a step up. Some are really starting to take those steps of really starting to create palettes or they want to get into, the finer things. And so now they're starting to go for rosin. I see.
It's kind of mirroring what's happening in the rest of the New Mexico market.
Oh yeah, for sure. And this is this industry in general is moving a lot faster than other ones because of like certain things that New Mexico has also done. Yeah. In my opinion, I feel like the microcultivation licenses and all that it's really kind of like set it in a faster tone.
Yeah, and I've noticed that this entire time too, and I've said that many times on the show that we are on a sped up timeline. Our 5-year mature mark is going to look vastly different than Colorado's did. It was mature, but it's not going to look anything like ours. No. We already have lounges, like operating lounges. And we're already trying to figure out ways to expand, to different ways and to be a little more, accessible and open with cannabis here. That didn't happen in Colorado still hasn't, they still don't have lounges. They still don't have, actually. Yeah, they still don't have lounges. There's still a lot of strict stuff that's going on in Colorado. They haven't really advanced.
I think they've even hit like a recession at one point in their cannabis industry too.
Yeah, Denver is having a huge recession right now. And I've said this before, those of you that watch my show, only 30% of the cities in Colorado allow cannabis sales in the first place. So you have huge pockets of just saturated areas, Denver being one of them, just going through it. Because once New Mexico legalized it, that's no longer the Mecca, because right before New Mexico was Arizona, the neighbor. So they lost not one, but 2 huge customers that were going to their state to buy. And not only was it just Colorado, but Denver. You know, because, you know, where do people really want to go when they go to Colorado? Denver. Why not? Most dispensaries, beautiful area. You know, my dad's from Colorado. I got an aunt that lives in Colorado, you know, in Denver too. So, you know, I grew up going there, so I get it. You know, real pretty area, just too fucking packed for me. Too crowded. It's good to visit. But, you know, that's why they went. And so we're starting to see that. And once we realize that, we're like, we can't go that route. We can't do certain things. But one thing I have noticed is people in Sutherland Park do notice that, yes, this is temporary. Once Texas goes legal, we're going to see a similar thing happen to what happened in Colorado. Will it be as bad? Will it be as crazy? Will it hurt us as bad? I have no clue right now, because we are different, and we did this vastly different than Colorado.
Absolutely.
You know, it's more accessible, it's more open, and in my opinion only, you know, it's more equitable than most other states because of the way that we did it.
But you know, like I said, you know, and all that is right. I think like the way that we're moving to, it will mature in itself enough to be like kind of like solidified by the time that we get it to.
I agree.
So like I think all of it will also kind of like rear its head before even that. But like you said, we don't know yet. And the crazy thing is too is that and this is just another thing too. You know. Loyalty runs big, especially in Hispanic culture. It runs big. I mean,
you saw the Coca-Cola debacle a few months ago.
Oh yeah. I mean, and the thing is too is like for me, there's even restaurants, you know, that I will travel 20, 30 minutes away just to go to. So, you know, I think there will still be people that will be traveling from certain parts of, you know, El Paso to still come to like a certain store, you know, for like a certain person, or you know, for certain things, or you know,
but a consumption lounge.
Yeah. So you know, anything could really happen, you know, and that's why I fucking love this industry. I'm gonna say it again, like,
and in this industry in New Mexico, we allowed so much creativity to happen because you don't have states, or a lot of states, that allow deli style and packaging where you have the option. You know, not a lot of states do that. You know, some is just one or the other. You know, like, you know, we do deli, or we only do packaging because whatever, you know, reason. But New Mexico, we're like, well, you know, you got to get the license, but if you want to do deli style, then here it is. You know, you can do it, and here's the way you do it. And some people like that, you know, some people like package. So, you know, by all means, you know, do what you got to do. Absolutely. So, and that's great to hear. So, I guess moving on from this conversation, you know, from that part, you know, and getting more to what you've been doing, you know, because I don't want to just, you know, talk about, you know, Texas and cannabis with you. I also want to talk about cannabis and you. So you did the dabbing seminar last year, right?
I did.
Yeah, you did a couple of them.
I've only done one. I'm trying to do others.
It was the bud tender course. Yeah.
I did not do a bud tender course.
No, you didn't. Oh, it was the other one. Yeah. You were at the one, right? Or did you attend it?
I did not, but I know it was in Sutherland Park as well. A few of my colleagues
I know
went too,
quite a few people went.
Yeah, I wasn't part of that.
No.
We said you to hold it down.
But
it was just really cool. That was ran by Veronica and Matt the Plug.
Yeah. That's right.
And they also partnered with like Shane from Couch Lock as well. And you know, those people in general, they come with a lot of knowledge, and they bring a lot of knowledge to the industry. So, you know, just hearing that they were running that, I knew it was going to be a really good experience for any sort of newcomer as well. So yeah, I mean, from what I saw, everyone had like binders as well with like a lot of information. Everyone learned like a lot, and yeah, so they did that. But yeah, as far as like the seminar. That one we did in August of last year.
So it's been a year.
It's been a year,
yeah.
So it was a really good turnout. You know, we did it for a class of 25. You know, just wanted to keep it, you know, as, you know, it still seems like a lot, but it compared to like a lot of others, you know, there was a lot that we covered. You were there too. He brought his 6-foot dab tube, which is just amazing. But you know, that was just really cool. You know, it started off. I had you know, John and Jeff from Hash Bros. You know, they really helped in that. They went over, you know, the differences, you know, in, you know, rosin compared to resin compared to distillates, and you know, kind of like, you know, going over the basics of it and whatnot. And then Bennett, Honeybee Dabs, you know, she went over, you know, pretty much the the bud tender side of things, you know, cannabinoids, terpenes, entourage effects, all that. And then, you know, I had my setup with all my glass and how to take a proper dab, why I use this, why I use that. And it was a lot to try to squeeze into like a couple hours. And, you know, I probably could have talked all night, but, you know, I just wanted, you know, it was really cool, you know, seeing people just seeing that I've never seen anything like that, just ask so many questions. And it was it was just a very, very awesome experience. You know, it was, you know, Karina with Royal Roads. You know, she graciously helped out with that too. It was just an overall really, really good experience. And, you know, I definitely really want to do those more. I want to do also more that are catered to more like bud tender training as well too, rather than just like a consumer aspect. So those are on the agenda. I just definitely got to find time for them.
Yeah.
But that's coming for sure.
I think that'd be a cool thing because, you know, as we go on, I'm starting to see more interest in, you know, hashes and stuff here in New Mexico, especially, you know, hash rosin. As that kind of takes off, you know, and within that is an umbrella of different things. You have like 90U, you know, the full melt,
Mixed
and
micron.
then mixed micron, and then you have, you know, the static and all the other crap that, you know, that we have within the umbrella of that. And more people are finding interest in that.
Absolutely.
And so, you know, it's great that you're starting to educate people, and it was a great seminar. I had a lot of fun, you know, especially I didn't realize how many people wanted to hit like the 5-6 foot dabber. You know, like, I didn't realize that it was going to be that popular. That thing was popping the whole night.
Oh yeah, I kind of felt bad for you guys too, because I was like, all right, like you know, what you can do is, you know, you can take your tool up, they'll load you up with the dabber. Like, no, we want to hit this thing. Yeah, and it was really funny too, because some people that went that, or some of my regulars, like, oh, I don't think I'm gonna dab, and they're like, nah, give me it.
Yeah, let me try that.
And so it was just an overall, just a really good time. It was a lot of fun. I was super tired, super stressed out because I had never done anything like that. But honestly, like after that, I felt like just like I had completed something in my life. Like, I know as stupid as it sounds, like that's one of the first major things that I've ever really done from like start to finish, that, you know, was my idea. And then obviously I had help, but just something that I executed. And I was just so happy on that. So yeah. Do another one so bad.
Well, let me know. That'd be great to, you know, to attend again, to check it out and all that, because you guys did an amazing job.
Thank you so much.
The information was great. The vibes were amazing. You know, it was a great time of the year too. You know, it wasn't too hot. You know, it was starting to dip down a little in the temperature.
Absolutely.
So yeah, you know, congrats on the success of that.
Thank you.
I can't wait to see, you know what you're going to do next. And then speaking of, what plans do you have next? You know, any more educational stuff? You and I actually did a bunch of skits, you know, recently. You know, that was something cool too. We'll talk more about that, or actually, you'll know when I release it. But yeah, you know, what are some, you know, other projects you got working on?
Well, like one thing that I think everyone sees a lot of, you know, I do, you know, videography, photography as well. Creation is one thing that really helps in my my healing and, you know, my, you know, way of life and stuff. And, you know, what I'm doing now and what a lot of people are seeing is the South to North project that I'm doing. And I went up to Albuquerque, as everyone saw, you know, for one thing, which you guys will see in the future. But I went with some friends too, and we did, you know, that video project. We met up with a few people, you know, in different aspects. And what I wanted to really do with that was to kind of show a lot of, you know, my following, which is down here, to see what some glimpses of up north look like, you know, because you know, they're two completely different kind of communities themselves. And, you know, I really like to show what an industry person, like, you know, gets to see, you know, without the, you know, education aspect, without, you know, just to have fun with it, you know, just to make it look, you know, to see what comes out of my head, you know, just creatively. Yeah. So, you know, we're doing that too. Like you said, you know, I've been working more with, you know, collabing with, you know, you know, other, I don't want to say if we want to say their names.
Yeah, we don't want to spoil it.
Anything, but, you know, like, you know, it's just really cool. I think getting the community more together too, and us really doing these education things. Social media is not going away. It's going to be here. So utilizing it in the most modest, creative, educational, and just positive way. And I think that's what I want to do too. And yeah, like it's gonna be really, really fun coming up too. So. Yeah,
you know, it's really corny to say it, but, you know, with great power comes great responsibility.
For sure.
And so, you know, that's one thing I keep in mind too, is, you know, I want to use this as a great tool to reach out to people, not just for, you know, cat and dog videos. You know, like I wanted to use it, you know, the social media as a tool. Definitely. To really get that message out there, to get the education out there, because I think, you know, we're really doing a big dent in things, because the the high THC thing, people are starting to come around to it, like, the real truths of it. And as you said yourself, the consumer itself is starting to want better products. They're kind of, okay, what else is there?
Definitely.
And sometimes that's persuaded and sometimes that's just natural, and sometimes it's the natural process of, becoming, I wouldn't say more of a connoisseur, but becoming more of a real
a smarter consumer.
Yeah, exactly. And so it just comes in time.
Definitely.
You do it in almost anything that you take up. Video games, sports, whatever. Through time, you kind of get to the better things. Like, okay, I got this $100 bat. It did me well, but it cracked. I need a $200-$300 baseball bat. Maybe it'll last me a little longer. And you go that route.
Absolutely.
So that's cool, man. And I'm glad that you're still going and keeping the educational stuff. And I can't wait till we release the videos and stuff we did, which is freaking hilarious. And they're gonna be good. And well, I think a lot of good information in it. Maybe if people like it, we'll keep doing them, whatever.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
That's always the big test is if people like them or not.
For sure. And I mean, one thing that really resonated that you said last year, especially. Oh no, wait. I forgot when you said it, but it always resonates with me. But you said when you join this industry, you become an unconditional advocate.
Yeah.
And, especially in these type of things that we do, that's just part of it. And, it doesn't have to be boring. It's just doing it the fun way. So
yeah. Doing it the best way that, make people laugh. It doesn't have to be the boring stuff, because, we're going to be talking about some boring stuff here in a little bit, but, I always try to make it a little bit funny, and don't turn it off. It's not going to be that boring. It's just a lot of people don't like boring. We're going to be talking about the rule stuff. Yeah. You stay. That's awesome, man. And before we move on and everything to the next conversation, do you think it's important for companies in 2025 to make content on social media right now?
Yes. Yeah. Reason being is, and in my opinion and in my experience, just in sales in general, there's a certain kind of like experience that you need to really have with not just the product. Like everyone says the product will sell itself, yada yada. Yes and no, but like it's how you bring yourself. And for me, what I like to know is if something's really good, especially when it comes to cannabis, I want to know why they're doing it.
Yeah.
Not exactly how they're doing it, but why.
Yeah.
And most of the time you can tell when people are doing it right, because it shows in their product. And when you ask those whys, it's because I'm a consumer as well. This is why it brought me. Or something, is mid, and then you see that they're growing 50,000, 60,000 plants, you can kind of see where their mindset's at.
Yeah.
And, I'm not bashing it at all, but I think I'm going to cater, I kind of want to cater to more of those people that, that show it in their product, obviously. It shows, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So I look at it.
Yeah, definitely, man. Well, awesome. Well, before we move on, where can people find you online and in real life, so they can go buy some reefer from you?
For sure. So yeah, you can find me at Cowboy_Hoth. Everyone thinks Hoth is for Star Wars, but it's for Hash of the Holy because my last IG went yeah. But that's where you can find me now. I am also on Reddit as well. I'm starting to utilize Reddit more. And my handle on that is u/holiest of the hash.
Okay.
So you can find me there too.
Holiest of the hash. Nice. Well, appreciate you joining me, buddy. That was a great conversation that we had, man. But we're going to move on. We're going to talk about something a little bit more serious, but I'm going to keep it light for y'all too. I'm not going to go through everything, but we're going to talk about the rules. Rules. So this past week, the Cannabis Control Division is going to be having a rules hearing next month, September 3rd in Santa Fe at 9 a.m. and on Carrillos Road, Santa Fe, in the Rio Grande Room in the Tony Anaya building. I wanted to make sure I said that right. I had to look down. So that's exactly where it's going to be. And I'll remind y'all again towards the end of this where it's at. And could you put it in the description, Gino, at the end? Yeah, cool.
I'll think about it.
So yeah, we'll get it down in the description for you guys, all that information, the time and place and everything, so y'all can be there. It's very, 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 very important that we all show up to every single one of these, as many as that we can, because rules are very important. They can change a lot of things. And you guys are going to see that as I go down the list of some of these. I'm going to do the good ones and then the bad ones. And then we'll kind of compare and see, really where we're at. And you can see how important this is, because your voice can change these rules, but easier than we can change the laws and everything. It's easier to change rules than it is the laws. And that's why I am more of an advocate for passing things with less thought around the regulation and more thought and when it gets to the rules, because that's when you get more of a say. But you only do if you say something.
Your voice is a lot louder than you think.
Exactly, 100%. And like I've said this before, and even our Congressman Gabe Vasquez said to me once, it only takes two people for constituent to turn to constituents. And that is true at every level of politics. Once two people say, hey, this is my worry, they can now make that plural. And so they don't have to tell you how many, but they just tell you plural. And most people don't even ask, well, how many told you that?
and it's as simple as person, people.
Exactly.
That's it.
Yeah, that's all it is. So keep that in mind. It doesn't take that many. The power of people, and sometimes it's the power of two.
It takes two
take
to
a
tango,
two.
or something like that.
And to be honest, it was three of us that went to Santa Fe and saved the drive-thrus. So could you imagine how many, how it would have been if we had, a couple hundred, maybe 20, 30, 50. So keep that in mind. The reason why I'm saying this is because you can make your comment now, and they're going to go through it. But you can also go in person and do it again. So you can almost make two comments, but they're going to obviously take your name. And so, I don't know, they'll probably read both, but they're obviously going to listen to you. It's better to be in person than it is just to write it. It always is. The other thing is you can also talk to people afterwards too, and they get a better, gauge of where you're coming from. You also get to meet with more industry people and kind of figure out where everybody's at as well. So I'm going to be in Santa Fe. I'm going to go up, I don't know, a day trip. We'll figure it out. I don't know if you're going to be able to make it up. It'd be great to have you up there. But the rules hearings are very important, and I'm going to go through some of them right here. I have a list of a few that I picked out. Some that you have, some of you have already mentioned in, comments and stuff, because I did post this on my socials earlier this week. As soon as I found out, I posted it everywhere. A bunch of people were sharing it, which is great. I wanted a bunch of you to share it so that way you can get in the know, have the information, and kind of move on from there. So first off, we're going to go down the list. This one I put under OK. They're removing the definition of an immature plant. So if it's not mature, that means it's immature. So, they remove the whole definition.
The redundancy of it.
Yeah, the redundancy of it. And you'll see why. I'll almost explain why here in a little bit. They also, and it was confusing. The definition they had like above 15 inches and not more than 15 inches wide. Something really stupid. I think they're trying to mess with canopy stuff, and it didn't work. So I'm glad that's gone. But next, it's free medical cannabis products. Now, this one's kind of huge, and I didn't expect it to be in there. Now, this was under an area where previously it had where you couldn't give away any cannabis to anyone. That part is now crossed out. And so the way these work is when you look at the document, you're going to see a bunch of weird shit on it. You're going to see some stuff crossed out, and you're going to see some stuff underlined. The underlined stuff means that's newly added. Anything crossed out means that's what they're taking out and going to remove. So the whole area where it was banning people or dispensaries for giving free cannabis to people, taken out. And it was replaced with this area. And it said that you can do it. And it says a licensed retailer shall not provide free cannabis or cannabis products to any person. A licensed retailer shall not allow individuals who are employed or not employed by a least licensed retailer to provide free cannabis products to any person licensed premise, right? Hold on. Then it goes on to say, notwithstanding paragraph 1, section sub, and they actually cut that section out because they removed it, and they entered this new one, subsection Z, and I'll get to the subsection Z a little bit later, guys. You'll see why. To order provide access to medical cannabis patients who have a difficulty accessing medical cannabis or cannabis products. A license may provide free cannabis or cannabis products if the following criteria are met. So what this means is that if these rules go into effect, and they may enforce all of them, they may just do just this one. If they do just one, I think this would be the best. Because this means that dispensaries can give away free medical cannabis to medical cannabis patients who have a hard time affording it. And to be honest, wow, where has the fuck has this been? Because we have been begging for over a decade for this in the medical camp. Since I've been a patient, really, we've been begging for this, and we wanted a patient fund and this and that. But this right here, this will benefit patients exponentially. I mean, what is your thought so far before I even go down the, what you have to, the criteria is?
I mean, that's from my perspective as a bud tender, that is definitely something that we definitely need. Some patients, even though we do get quite a bit of allotments, I do see, some of them, even though they're not maxing it out, like at points when, they get their allotments back, but, it's at a point where, they can't afford anything, they really need relief. That sort of thing where they're able to, put a certain allotment of, grams that are, pro bono in a sense, that definitely helps out, until they get back on financial feet or, whatever. So, that definitely helps, because as it is too, there are those sort of programs that are in Western medicine as it is, even they're not giving things away free, there's things like GoodRx, that help, substantially. It's helped me a lot. I know it's helped a lot of you out too. So it's just a no-brainer for sure. So that's definitely what we needed.
Yeah, I agree, man. And thank you for that, and kind of, really just making the argument that this is a great thing. That's great.
And it also shows that, there's, in my opinion, that there is more of like that connection between the state and the patient and, just our community. So that's definitely starting to put things into a better connection.
And who better than the patients? And then
Absolutely.
Eventually, who knows, they'll allow everybody to do it. If someone who doesn't have a medical cannabis card and they use it medicinally and they just self-medicate if they need it, maybe in the future that can open it up to that if this works well. Because this seems like a pilot program kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll go through the criteria real quick. Free cannabis products are provided only to a qualified patient, primary caregiver, or reciprocal patient. So this opens it up to reciprocal patients too. So it could be someone like, Adrian here, who's a reciprocal patient. We've talked about it before. Him and I did a whole video kind of recently, on an educational thing on the whole thing. So go check it out. It's on both of our Instagrams and everything in our socials. Reciprocal patient in possession of a valid registry identification card from the Department of Health Medical Cannabis Program. So if you're a reciprocal patient, you'll just get signed up from a dispensary and they'll give you a nifty little piece of paper from the Department of Health here in New Mexico, and you'll just use that as your medical cannabis card for New Mexico. That's how that works. The second criteria, the cannabis or cannabis product comply with all applicable requirements from the Cannabis Regulation Act, or the CRA, and the Linen Air Compassionate Use Act, or the LACUA, and division rules, or the CCD. The cannabis products, the cannabis or the cannabis products have properly recorded in track and trace system as belong to the licensed retailer. I don't know how that's going to look. So don't come asking me, hey, Chad, how are we going to put this in BioTrack and everything? I have no fucking clue right now.
I know.
How do you think?
I think the way that they're going to do it within BioTrack, there's like a certain sort of like criteria. And like, I've never really worked with BioTrack, but there's like, for example, like a sample, not necessarily something that's being like sold to like a store to be sold on a retail aspect, but if certain dispensaries or certain owner wants to sample something to bring on. Yeah. So maybe they're going to use something like that in order to keep it tracked from
keep it under that category.
Absolutely. That way the state can also track, okay, what's actually being sold and what we're going to take tax on and what we're not going to take tax on. Now, this is another thing that they're going to have to keep a really good track on, because you're going to be bad actors, possibly.
Yeah. Please, guys, let's have this in good faith. I know there's going to be bad actors. I know someone's going to fuck up.
That's why I tried to say possibly.
It happens. Someone's gonna use a gray area or something.
Yeah, for sure.
But please, guys, let's try to just get it to the people who really need it. And you guys know who they are. The operators, know who they are. So please get it to them. If this does pass the way it's written right now. The next criteria: cannabis products must be applied towards an adequate supply for a medical cannabis customer pursuant to the Department of Health rules, meaning that it will go against your unit numbers. The transaction shall be properly recorded in the licensed retailer's inventory records. So pretty much just it's the same as a regular transaction. They just want the same kind of tracing, which is fair. I mean, that's you're giving away a product. They just want it tracked and traced. Then as long as it's going to a good cause, they don't give a shit. Just track it right. Which, to be honest, is fair.
I literally just called.
Yeah, exactly. That's fair. That's fair. So you called it. And some of this, I kind of skimmed through, and I was like, that'd be great, but I didn't really read it because I wanted to kind of learn it with you guys. Yeah. I'm going to dig into it more. I have a few weeks, and also I'm going to be doing a Zoom meeting with my friend Jonathan, who I started advocacy with way back in the day. We're going to be doing a Zoom meeting with a bunch of people. We're going to kind of game plan, figure out what people think of the rules, what they see, what we see, and kind of get our testimonies kind of in line and everything. So I'm going to be getting that information out probably in the next couple of days. By the time you get this, hopefully I'll have that information out already, or you see this episode. So I'm going to get that information out so that way we can all collaborate and either meet up together. You can watch live, but you cannot make public comment. That is the only downside to it. That is another reason why it's better to go in person. Yeah, you can make your public comment online beforehand. But it has to be before the meeting ends that you press that submit button.
So are they just not allowing Zoom meetings this time, or?
So they're allowed. Well, it's not going to be a Zoom meeting. It's just going to be you're going to be able to watch it live. Yeah, so it's
Okay,
not going to be through
so
Zoom.
it's like different from like a legislative session.
Yeah,
Like,
well,
for
the
sure.
legislative session, sometimes they have it on Zoom and sometimes it's on the website. It's usually
Oh, it's
always on
because
the
this
website.
is because this is CCD. This is
Yeah, this is a
Oh,
CCD
okay, that makes sense.
RLD
Sorry,
thing. Yeah.
I'm my bad. I'm still thinking legislative. My
Yeah.
bad.
No worries, man. Yeah,
Okay.
I get mixed up sometimes too. I'm like,
Mm.
oh wait, like earlier I mixed up the bud tending thing and the whole your seminar.
But I'm still gonna call it out. That's not cool.
Yeah.
They should definitely let people chime in like
Yeah.
online.
And then to be honest, in the rules at the bottom of the page, I forgot to like put this in here, but I'll mention it. At every page of the bottom of the rules, they are asking for pretty much, if the rules go through, that they can do that. They can, call a rule hearing online and have everybody participate online. So that's something that is in this change now that's underlined. So it's added. So that could be in the future. So we'll see.
So they just got to follow their dumb
Protocol.
rules.
Yeah. They sometimes they'll tell you, hey guys, got to follow dumb rules, so I can't do that. So it is what it is, and they're slowly trying to change it, and hopefully that does pass, because that's actually a really cool change. All right, so the next one, so that was the free cannabis thing. That's great. There's caveats and everything, and I'll read Z in a little bit and what that says. So the next one, so this is going to be license types for lounges. And I forgot this was a thing because the CCD initially had 2 different license types for consumption lounges. And I don't know if they were implementing that or just kind of figured out that it was kind of dumb and, no one was really using the other one or what. But the first type was type 1, and it was permit. And it was a licensed cannabis consumption area where cannabis products may be consumed on the licensed premise, except for products consumed through the respiratory system. So edibles, food, drinks, and stuff, it made no sense, right? And then the type 2, and it's going to be a consumption lounge where you light it up. And so reading this, I realized that, that's stupid as shit, because you usually either do both or, one or the other, whatever's kind of rare. And some places are kind of thinking, okay, we're going to have the area where you can smoke, and then we'll have a non-smoking area, would just be edibles and whatever. That's the thought that some places have. It's not a bad idea. But it's good that they're just putting it together and letting you figure it out from your customer base. It's easier to do it that way than forcing everybody to do one thing. So that one, I was like, okay. The next one is getting rid of exit packaging. If you have never been to a consumption lounge, if you have your product there, you can leave with it, but you have to have exit packaging. You have to put another little packaging on there to make the bureaucratic gods happy, and you walk out with it. Now they're getting rid of that. That's no longer required. That's what that means when I say getting rid of it. So now you can just leave the consumption lounge with the product that you bought, because it's properly tagged everywhere already. So what's the point of telling them, oh, I got this at a lounge or not? You should be storing it safely when you're driving anyway. So i.e. in your trunk. So, or, somewhere out of the reach of view. So you can't get in trouble. So that's on you. But, this is great that they're removing that, because there's just one more step that didn't really make sense.
I think what they were trying to do too, and they got a lot of feedback from it, is because they were still trying to treat cannabis like alcohol.
Yeah.
Which they are completely different. I think they're really starting to understand, hey, we need to not treat it like that, because it is medicine for sure.
Yeah, 100%.
Which is great.
And so the next one I'm going to talk about, the rule change, is going to be about testing. Now, I think this is a good one, but we'll see how it works, and if it's going to be tweaked at all. Maybe someone has some great ideas on it too, on some changes. So what this is a finished product. If it's tested and issued by a state licensed cannabis testing laboratory and is final, and it may not be retested. So meaning, if you got a test, it passed, and it's finalized by that test, by that facility, you can't go to another facility and get it retested, because you didn't like the fact that testing facility didn't give you the number that you wanted. Yeah, exactly. That was exactly my laugh that I heard in my head when I read this. I was like, hey! Yeah! So it's a 90-day period. That's a long time you got to wait. Now, the caveat to this is you do get a retry if you fail. So if you fail the test, now that's why I'm like, there could be a flaw. So let's say there's a corrupt testing facility. I'm not saying there's any. I'm not saying, I know any, whatever. I'm just saying if, this is a way around it. If there's a testing facility and they know that the customer that brought them the product wants a higher number, and the number that came out officially is not the number they wanted, they could fail it on something or test it more rigorously to fail it on something, and then give that person that 180 days that is in the rules now, or that's in the rules, for them to get to remediate. And so when they get to remediate, they get 180 days and they get to retest. So they get one remediation. And if they don't remediate, then they have to destroy it, which, okay, fair. But I can see that being used in that manner. and someone going through a gray area like that. And like I always say, there's always the unknown variables. So there's going to be other ways that people figure out that I don't even think of. But I do think that's a good change. 90 days, if you pass it and fair and square, it's 22% and you wanted 33,000, tough shit. You got 90 days or go sell it on the market and try to make your money. Maybe your terp's at 3%. So maybe you should start leaning on that. Maybe you'll start changing your marketing strategy and everything too.
And maybe it'll also help us to educate correctly too. Yeah,
exactly, 100%. And get away from this high THC thing and all that stuff, because we all know THC doesn't fucking matter. I'm gonna say that, and I'm gonna kick that horse till it's powder. We keep doing it. Okay, so what's the next one? What is that last one I did anyway?
We talked about medical packaging.
Yeah, the medical packaging. So there's going to be one for, medical cannabis products. So this one's going to be for packaging. There's going to be, the track and trace system stuff. It has to belong to the licensed retailer for this one. They've been properly recorded. I think that's for the last one that I was talking about.
Oh, how about?
Yeah. That's for the last one I was talking about. No worries. Because I was at the bottom right here. I was like, oh wait, it's right there. So anyway, the next one that we're going to talk about is it's going to be a limited incremental increase, and that means for the plant counts. So they gave you an incremental increase that you can do throughout the year. Now they're taking that out, all in general. So what that tells me is that we're going to start cracking down on the plant count fucking finally. We finally need that. And that's the real reason that we have such an oversaturation of cheap cannabis product in here in New Mexico, is because some farms have 54,000 fucking plants. That's a lot, dude. How can you tend to that many plants? That is crazy. You're going to be paying a lot of people to do that, or maybe you got robots. I don't know. But a lot of the times what ends up happening is that product ends up not being as high a quality. Yeah. I'm not saying the people that have the 54,000 plant farm have high quality, low quality, no quality. I have no clue. But I'm just saying that a lot of the times, most of the time, it's harder to keep quality up when you have these huge farms, and time again, it's been proven.
Yeah. I mean, the biggest thing right now is Canada. I'm not even if you're aware of Canada.
I've mentioned that many times. Go ahead.
Yeah. if you're not aware of that, Canada is very, 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 very oversaturated. And they've even gone to accounts of radiating cannabis to get rid of mold, to get rid of things that happen because it's sitting and it's stored and it's not being stored properly. Yeah. And because it's being radiated and it retests correctly, the consumer won't even know it.
Yeah.
That's what's scary.
Yeah, that is. And so that's, and using ozone and stuff like that, just stuff that might be harmful for you later down the road, or even just one-time use, you never know, isn't good. So, we want to push that quality. And that's why bringing plant counts down here in New Mexico is such a high priority. We're not going to try to close licenses. That makes no sense. When you bring the plant counts down, how are you going to sell cannabis when there is no cannabis to sell, or that type of cannabis that you want or you try to find? So the demand has changed. We're on a supply and demand kind of system, right? Well, the demand's changed. So now it's time to change the supply. And what do? You change the plant count. It's just simple, economics, business, all that good stuff. And it looks like we're finally heading towards that. And that's a good thing. So next, this next one here, which is the last one of all the good ones that I had. Like I said, I didn't go through every single one of them. These are just ones that I picked out that I kind of felt were worthy of, talking and everything. A couple of them I couldn't find that people were talking about. So if you guys have an idea where it's at, let me know. I may have just missed it. Like I said, this is my first time really going through it thoroughly, that I had a time to sit down. So this last one is cannabis and cannabis products removed from their packaging or display shall not be sold. This is being removed. So this part was crossed out. So before, how when you have a display, you couldn't sell it anymore. Like, oh, you can't sell the displays. Well, they're removing that. So now you can sell the displays and get your money back from it, because a lot of people are losing money. Like, well, I need to put out a display, but I lose money on that display. I can at least get 50% back,
I think,
cost.
Well, the thing is too, is that goes, this is the way that I look at it. It goes back to the whole, like I said, there's that certain, criteria in the biotrack that's for sample.
Yeah.
That's what that was also used for.
Yeah.
Was for like displays and stuff like that too. So like that's, I can see why they're taking it away, but I quote me if I'm wrong, but there are some instances where there are samples that are given to dispensaries specifically for displays.
Yeah.
So I think that's also where they're just trying to I don't know, but that's
cut the fat.
I see.
Some of the stuff in here is fat cutting, but now after that one, we got to the what the fuck, now we're on the stuff that I was kind of like, I'm not really a fan here. So remember that whole mature plant thing that I was going to tell you guys about a little later? Well, here it is. So the mature plant, and here's the definition, means a flowering cannabis plant that is taller than 15 inches. They already have it as flowering, right? And so that means it's already in its reproductive state. So that was the thing that they took out, and I was kind of like, what the fuck? But I wanted to mention it because it adds context to everything else that was going on with it too. Because so they took out, they added F. There was nothing on F, so it had like the word reserved. And when you see reserved, that means there's nothing there. It's reserved for something else. They have it crossed out, and they have flowering. So they defined what flowering is, the nodes, blah, 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 this and that, and having hairs and visible flowers is defined. I'm like, cool, sweet. And so you go down here to mature plant, and you see this derpy motherfucker, and you're like, what is this shit? And I was like, no wonder why they took that out. They took out immature plant, excuse me. And so they changed the mature plant thing. But the taller than 15 inches makes no sense to me. They only had to be, mature plant means a flowering cannabis plant. That's it. That's all you have to leave it as. Not, that is taller than 15 inches. So what you're telling me is that I can have a immature flowering plant that is 34 inches because that is shorter than 15 inches. Say it's 10 inches. So now I have a immature plant that is flowering. So like, what are we doing here? And so that gets a little confusing. So they just need to take out that 15 inches thing.
Absolutely.
So that's why I was like, what the fuck? That makes no sense to me. So that's the reason why I saved that for there because the next one that we're going to talk about is for the application. So when you're applying for your license, you have, all the paperwork you put in and everything. Now they want a proof of lawful possession. And what that means is every name has to match. So if your name is on the lease, it has to be on the license. It can't be different names and everything like that. And, partners doing this and that. Mm-hmm. For me, it's a what the fuck because this can go a bad way. What if someone already has something set up this way and they can do it that way and they are operating in good faith? They're not trying to operate in some weird way. Mass punishment never really works. But I'd really like to hear their reasoning as to why they did this. And I'll read what it says, and it says proof of the applicant has lawful possession of premise to be licensed or licensed premise. Proof of lawful possession consists of property executed deeds of trust held by entity applying the license. Well, fair enough, right? Hold on. Or proposed premise, if the proposed premise or licensed premise is not owned by the applicant, or license, then the applicant shall provide an executed copy of the property certification form found on the division's website, meaning more bureaucracy. So instead of just sending either the license, the lease agreement, you have to go and put the lease agreement on here and then send them this form. And so now you have to, like I said before, make the bureaucracy gods happy. And that's not something I like to see. They're adding this component. If you wanted proof of me having ownership or being a part of that building, I'll provide you the lease, or the documentation that I own it. But why do I have to go in and do this certification form? That's just more, and who knows if it costs. I don't even know if there's a cost behind this because a lot of the forms that you have to get from the county and city and stuff, they cost $30, $20 sometimes, and sometimes even more, depending on what you need. So I don't know if this is going to be another cost that we have to incur when we're renewing or getting a new license. So that's why I was like, what? That doesn't really make sense. Okay, I get the proof of, having the ownership, but what? Don't make me do more paperwork like that, on top of already giving you paperwork that I've done. So there's that one. And what do you think of that one, by the way?
It's just going to be more confusing, and it's I think it's really going to inhibit some people of really wanting to join this industry. Yeah. And doing sort of that stuff. In my honest opinion too, this could potentially also hurt some MSOs maybe as well. I could be wrong. Yeah. But that's where I could see too, because, you need partners and stuff like that too. Yeah. So that's where things can also get misconstrued as well. It just seems like from all the okays earlier, now it seems like it's where else can we screw up in?
Yeah. It's we dunked 3 times. Now we forgot how to dribble.
Yeah, there we go. So, it makes no sense. It just seems like there's just one more hurdle. It's unnecessary. Yeah. And I can understand where they're coming from because they've probably dealt with bad situations and whatnot, but that's not the way to go.
Yeah, I agree. This isn't it, guys. It's saying it right here. Please take that out. Anyway,
we understand, but no.
So these next two are going to be interesting because it is the state essentially banning the hemp delta stuff through rules. They couldn't get it done through the law, so they essentially went through the rule stuff. And this first one's interesting because it may have more consequences than we actually know. So if you haven't read this yet, I suggest you guys go and read it. And I'll try to have Gino leave the link for the rules and stuff so you can guys go read them. There's like 8 different pages, but they're fairly short, most of them. And you just look for the underlines and the stuff scored through. So it's fairly easy. So this is what it says. I'll read it to you verbatim. A manufacturer shall not manufacture or distribute a cannabis product that has intended to be consumed by inhalation that includes polyethylene glycol, vitamin E, and then vitamin E acetate, or medium chain triglycerides, nicotine, or any hemp-derived ingredients, including but not limited to cannabinoids, terpenes, or extracts derived from industrial hemp. You got to be shitting me. Like, that is literally one of the dumbest things I have heard when it comes to this, because cannabinoids in hemp and cannabis, they're the fucking same. The exact fucking same, just at different levels. And to be honest, they're the same damn plant, because the federal government has it defined at 0.3% THC. There's nothing else that makes it different from hemp. Now, back in the day, there was a difference in hemp and cannabis and THC. It was low THC, and a lot of people seen it as like the male version, and or a Rulez. It wasn't this THC percentage thing. It was just known to have low THC to almost none. So that's why they went with that definition. It's arbitrary, if anything. So what this does is cause even more confusion, because terpenes is on here. Guess what? Hemp and cannabis have the same fucking terpenes, the exact same ones, just at different levels. So when you have stuff like this, you're going to have just mass confusion. And to be honest, all this is going to do is have different entities attacking each other. Just recently, an operator told me that they were visited by the environmental department, and the environmental department told them, you can't have CBD on any of your labels. And they said, what are you talking about? And they said, you put CBD in there, so you can't have CBD on the label. That's a hemp product. That's federally regulated. You can't have and there was a bunch of confusion and went back and forth for a little bit. And they're like, wait. So you're telling me I can't have CBD on the label, but the CCD requires me to have CBD on the label. And so now I have to break the law in order to make you happy, or I have to make them happy and break the law with you. So get your heads out of your asses and talk to each other, which I'm glad they told them. But what happened in the end is the environmental department was unaware that they exist together. The same fucking thing. Yeah. Like CBD turns into THC to CBN, right? CBD is always going to be in natural growing occurring cannabis. Same with Delta 8, same with Delta O, same with Delta 10, just at very low levels. CBD is going to be higher than those other ones that I mentioned. And those ones are so low, it's not even worth extracting it normally. That's why they go through that synthesized process from CBD to make them into those products, because it doesn't make sense. And it's the little loophole gray area thing that they keep calling it. And
God forbid that there's 1-to-1 female plants that are grown specifically with CBD.
Yeah, exactly. Or you have something that's, let's say, a 4-to-1, a high CBD to THC, a low THC, high CBD. Those are truly fucking medicinal. Those are straight medicinal plants. And that's where I get a little frustrated, because I'm like, guys, come on, you can't shit the bed this bad. Like, if you're going to try to regulate cannabis, we have to do it the right way. And we can't do this, because this is going to screw us up. This is going to cause confusion. This is going to cause lawsuits. And this is just going to be worse than what Texas is doing. Almost. It's not going to be that bad. But it's going to be pretty damn bad for our industry if we do this. Just a little bit. Yeah, just a little bit. Yeah. So there's that one, right? It gets fucking worse. So the next one on here is they're going to be restricting cannabinoid conversion, which is synthesizing, CBD into Delta 8 and stuff, right? I don't see any company in New Mexico doing that already. It doesn't really make sense, because you have to spend money on hemp products, then you have to convert it into these other products, and by the end of it, you might as well have just used regular freaking cannabis. You're already in the cannabis industry. So what I think this is them trying to ban Delta 8 and all the other stuff like it, because it even says right here, licensees shall not engage or facilitate the chemical alteration of cannabinoids for the purpose of increasing intoxicating effects. Now, when I hear that, I'm like, So certain things that people do that isn't that could be misconstrued for that. So we're creating more confusion.
Yeah.
So someone that's doing something perfectly legal, 100% the way, they're not even creating Delta 8 or trying to or whatever. It
There's
could be
no
misconstrued
need to.
because of that. Yeah, there's no need to. It could be construed just because of that language right there. So that's why I'm like, what, dude, come on. You know, you guys are trying way too hard to get on this Delta 8 ban that now it's bleeding into the cannabis industry, and it's going to just ruin the cannabis industry because, like I said before, there's already a lot of confusion in between cannabis and hemp at the federal level that we have different entities controlling it. And this is what happens when you do that. You get misinformation, you get confusion, and you get entities not knowing what the hell they're talking about. Because now we're trying to ban cannabinoids and terpenes in the cannabis industry because they might be derived from the hemp industry. You know, like that doesn't make any sense to me. You know, so we're just going to have THC products. So everything's going to be extracts now. So that's why that's a what? Like, what the fuck? Like, these two right here are main things I really wanted to talk about, but it had to be, you know, get the other stuff out of the way. What are your thoughts on these two, by the way?
That I am just kind of appalled that a lot of my regulars know what the entourage effect is compared to what our politicians that are writing our laws are doing.
Yeah, the people it fucking blows your mind, right?
Yeah, and this is one thing that I talk about, and it's gonna go back to the THC percentages don't matter, but this is just a really good example. And what I tell customers is we have to put, or just manufacturers have to put those numbers on those labels because of laws.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna say that right now. Not because they matter, because they don't, but because that's what the law requires. And that's the only length that they go, because that's all they want to do.
Yeah.
In my honest opinion.
Yeah.
So once again, it leads into these type of things, the entourage effect. If you don't know what the entourage effect, it takes everything that naturally occurs in a cultivar, cannabinoids like CBD, also like THCV, CBG, CBD, flavorants like Tropicana sulfur compounds, which are different from terpenes, which also are in there, and they all work together to give you the experience that you are experiencing.
Yeah.
So that's what we're also saying is like you can't get away from it because it's naturally in there.
Yeah, 100%. And that's where I'm getting at, that we're going to end up with nothing but synthetic or semi-synthetic or, unnatural, highly processed, cannabis. Like we're going in a weird direction with these set of rules right here. These two alone could really ruin the industry. Just through my own interpretation and, other people hearing it and the shock on their face, just like, what? Because this doesn't make any sense. So I'll digress from that and we'll move on because, there's a few more that I want to talk about, but keep those in mind. And if you are pissed about them, you have every right to be, but please be pissed at the right people. Make your public comments. So this next one has to deal with medical cannabis, and I really don't like this one. They're limiting medical cannabis patients to 800 milligrams for the whole packaging per edibles at one time. And they've never done this before because you can kind of get however milligrams you need here in New Mexico as a medical cannabis patient. But this right here isn't good because there's certain patients who need that high dosage of THC milligrams, but they need it at a reasonable price. So if they can get 500 milligrams for $30, great. If you do this, that might make it go up because they usually get 2 packages of that. And now they have to buy more because they get that only whatever max it is. And when they could, just get 2 500s versus maxing out at 800, or maybe someone provides 1,000. I think someone did mention they provide 1,000 milligrams for certain people, and it's probably going to be at a better price because it's all in one and it's, more of a bulk pricing. I don't like that. I don't like when they limit patients. Recreational side, sure, all day, whatever you want to do, as long as it's reasonable. But when it comes to the patients, leave us alone, please. Like no one's getting hurt. There's no reason to do this. I've bought the 500 milligram edibles before, and I took them throughout the week. It was great. It was great to be able to, pop a 30 milligram. I think the max you can get is like 30 milligrams or something like that. 50? There you go. 50
per piece, right?
Yeah, per piece. Per piece on the medical side is the max you can get per piece. So popping a 50 each time, that was kind of nice. I didn't have to eat like 5 pieces. I just ate 1 piece. Yeah. And I was pretty medicated. So, this right here just isn't good for the patients. We have tried to limit things like this in the past, and it always gets changed back. So I don't know why it's back. And it could just be the fact that they didn't know that we've tried similar stuff like this in the past, and it just doesn't really work and doesn't really go well. So hopefully this doesn't stay either. but it's not as damning as the last two I've talked about. Sorry, I had to go back on that and bring up old shit. How do you feel about this one?
Once again, it's messing with the wrong people.
Yeah.
I think too, as it is, look, it's just in general from my perspective, there is already less medical products when it comes to edibles on the market because, and it is what it is, but manufacturers are making their money on recreational.
Yep.
And that, it's just the cold hard truth.
Yeah, and you can see it in the sales data.
So as it is, there are manufacturers that are trying to cater to the medical patient more now, and as the tax starts to go up, hopefully we'll start to see more med patients, on the program as well. But it's just one other thing that's going to be hard for especially like manufacturers too.
Yeah.
Like it's just going back.
Yeah.
Again.
100%. Yeah. This is going backwards and it's not in a good direction. We've been here before and it's not a good direction. Next, cannabis products that have undergone remediation process to remove microbial contaminants must be labeled as remediated with the logo provided that the division notifies a reasonable person that the product was remediated that no smaller than 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch, so the same size as the THC logo. This is interesting, and when I look at that, I go, oh, brother, but at least we're being told. I'm like, okay, I don't like it, but I can respect the honesty. But how honest are people gonna be? Because like, when you see that, it's gonna be cheap, remediated. It's gonna be it's gonna be on the cheaper side. So what do you think about that? That's yeah.
I mean,
yeah, right.
my heart says fuck yeah, but like this is going to change up a lot, and the reason why I say that is because I am not defending CRC, which is a remediating. That's what they're referring to, right? Is that type of stuff, right? Like if you're remediating, I don't believe like it's a good product, anyways. Yeah. I just don't. But in my experience, being able to see how different extractors work, I can see how some are using it for specific reasons and ones that are just trying to turn shit into gold.
Yeah.
And I think that's what the big thing is. And I understand, if something is a good quality product, and it's a premium product and it's at this price, I understand that not everyone that wants it is going to afford it.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, if someone's going to choose a product that is aware of something and that they know that they're going to put in their body, but they know that they can afford it at a certain price, they need to at least know what they're putting in. Because I would at least have someone know that they're getting something that has CRC in it, than have someone that doesn't know that they have it, but they think that they have quality, and they could have some issues or some sort of reaction they don't even know about, and it could lead to worse things.
Yeah, exactly. 100%. Thank you for that. Like the molds and all that stuff like that too. Because a lot of these stuff they're going to go through the things that we talked about earlier. The radiations and stuff like that to remediate these, or maybe they'll just turn it into a different product to try to remediate it and send it through CRC. I don't know, but yeah, I'm torn like you are. Part of me is like, fuck yeah, thank you for the honesty, but a part of me is like, ugh, like why are we allowing that?
Yeah,
but it's happening either way.
Yeah, and the thing is too, one thing that I will use an example too is pesticides.
Yes.
Everyone is scared of pesticides, but no one knows like what exactly qualifies as a pesticide. Yeah. Let's take, for example, neem oil.
Yeah.
Neem oil is 100% organic.
Yeah.
But is a pesticide.
Yep. 100%.
And a lot of cannabis and a lot of high-end growers and a lot of qualified and experienced growers use neem oil. And in very good products that a lot of people wouldn't even know it's in there.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm not, once again, I am not defending pesticides whatsoever, but it's just knowing the education of what qualifies a pesticide. Yeah. And that kind of leads into, that type of stuff too, is that.
Yeah. No, I agree, man. And this could go great. This could go really bad. It's a teeter-totter thing. I don't know the nitty-gritty of it, but that's pretty much what's going on with this. This is kind of huge for the industry to do this. I've
never seen it done.
I have never seen
it done.
Yeah, this is the first time he's seeing this. like I said, it can be a good thing. It can be, but we'll see. Time will see. I'm so torn on it. So that's why we're just going to move on to the next conversation, and I'll have more conversations with everyone else and get your guys' point of view too, because I really cherish what everyone has to say too. So the next one, and we got a couple more left too, and we're probably running over time right now. So the next one is going to be that Z thing I was talking about with the no free cannabis thing. Remember that other definition? Well, here it is. So, and it was subsection Z. That's why I called it that. So no free commercial cannabis. That is the caveat to that. Except as provided in subsection J, which is for the medical cannabis patients, a license shall not provide free commercial cannabis or cannabis products to any person. A licensee shall not allow its employees or other individuals associated with the license to provide free commercial cannabis or cannabis products to any person, or allow individuals to provide free commercial cannabis or cannabis products on its licensed premise. So what this means is you can only give free cannabis to medical cannabis patients, and they pretty much have this on there twice, because that first one I read you before the other one, it's pretty much saying the same thing. It's pretty much reiterating that same thing, and it's kind of redundant, to be honest. So that's the reason why I wanted to mention it to you, because they are being clear that it is only for medical cannabis patients, not for recreational cannabis patients. Can it be one day? Maybe. I don't know if this goes well. But right now, it is not. And to be honest, I think that's the way it should be for now. The patient's always first.
There's got to be that respect to the medical patient.
Exactly. The patient's always first. And so this is something really positive for the patients, getting free cannabis if you can't afford it. I mean, this is something that we scream on the top of our lungs for so long. So thank you for adding that. And I really do hope that gets implemented. What are your thoughts on, that language there, by the way, just clarification, I guess.
I mean, it's clear as day. And, one thing, what a lot of recreational patients don't know is there is that 100 milligram max for recreational because of that respect to the patient. And the thing is like, in other industries, people just want, those high milligram bags. And most of the time, if someone sells out that medical patient needs it, they're screwed. Yeah. Which they have the medical card for. So that's why there's that split there. So
yeah. So good for us, right? Hopefully that passes. We'll see.
Definitely.
So the next one I'm going to talk about, this one's for seeds, and the reason why I brought this up is because someone had mentioned that there was something in there where you needed a COA for mother plants, and clones and stuff, but I didn't see it. I looked a lot. I'm going to look a little bit further the next few days, but if anybody found it or knows where it's at, please just send it to me or send me a screenshot of it so I can see it, because I could not find it for the fucking life of me. But I did find this one about seeds where on the packaging, and this is if it's available kind of thing. This isn't like, for sure. It says if available or if known. They want the cannabis producer and the license number. But as we know, a lot of seeds in the industry don't come from a lot of licensed cannabis producers. They get them from seed companies that are throughout the nation and world. They're federally legal, by the way, seeds. The cultivar name they have strain of the cannabis seeds or immature plant. Okay. And if known germination rate of seeds. And I think there was something in there too about possible potency too, but I think that's something that was already in there, not something added. So that was something that was already in the rules. So if you had, or if known, the potential potency, it's required on the bag. But how are they going to know if you know that or not? If it's your own or not, whatever. You would have had to do a lot of testing and all kinds of other stuff. So
I think they just want like an expectation.
Yeah, and I was like, why do they keep wanting to add more stuff to the labels? They're going to make
they just want to have more control.
Yeah, and there's a lot of stuff for the labeling too. But labeling is kind of ridiculous already. So there's no need for me to say, hey, they're adding this to the labeling, because to be honest, we need to deregulate labeling as is. So I don't think that we should really comment on the stuff that they're trying to change. I think we need to comment on them. Hey, no. The direction we need to go is the opposite. Forget these rules that you propose for that altogether, and let's get some to deregulate. There's no need to have certain things on there right now. Like having the THC percentage really doesn't matter.
Even the CBD, because most of the time they're at like a 0.01 anyways.
Yeah, and most of them have it on there like that. And then we ran into that issue with the Department of, the environmental department, doing their thing and getting all butthurt. So, we want to avoid that. And the way that we do that is deregulating certain things that we can. Having the cultivar name, the producer, name on there. We don't have to have the freaking producer license and number on there. There's no
No.
need for that.
What is a consumer going to do with that?
They don't
Like,
care. Yeah, they give no shits. This is just for more control. Producer on there. Okay, cool. The consumer does want to know who produced it.
Yeah, I was going to say, most of the time, consumers don't even know who the producers are.
Yeah,
Like,
and sometimes they do,
unfortunate,
but most of them they don't. Yeah.
Yeah.
Having the manufacturer on there. Okay, maybe the testing facility. Okay, but you start to get into this other nitty gritty stuff. Like the licensing numbers of them. This other nuances, and you're just like, oh my god, the customer does not care, dude.
No,
they don't care at all. They don't read that. They're just gonna throw that away. Like that's just there so you guys can feel better. We need to go through and kind of figure out, okay, what can we get away with not having, and not worrying about, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because when it comes to flower, THC percentage shouldn't and doesn't matter. And we're going to get away from these high percentage THC things when we do two things: fix testing and get away from high THCs at the freaking sales counter. Like that's the only way we're going to get away from it. If not, the government's going to crack down on it and force us to do it. We do not want to do that because you see how dumb things are with this right here.
Arizona, for example, has a THC tax.
Yeah, see, it gets as dumb as that, and I can see us going that route if it does. Yeah,
I think Chicago does, or Illinois does too.
I think there's a couple places that do the high THC tax. You get charged more tax for higher THC products. Yeah, it's straight bullshit. So I digress on that, and we'll move on to the very last one of this, and then we'll get on to the last, couple little tidbit topics. Delivery of cannabis products. Now, this one was interesting to me because the very last part. Now, at the beginning, like, okay, because it says delivery of cannabis products from business to consumer shall only be conducted by a licensed cannabis courier. Okay, must be made exclusively to residential addresses. And I was like, what? It says no cannabis business to consumer delivery shall be made to commercial businesses, public spaces, or non-residential locations. So that right there kind of worries me because here in Las Cruces, we just changed our city zoning. So you can have housing anywhere. So I can be housed in a non-residential area, but be told I can't have cannabis delivery because I'm not in a residential area. What this does is pretty much punish poor people and younger people because those are systematically the people who live in situations like that away from residential areas. So this doesn't do anything but make somebody feel happy, about themselves because this makes no sense to me. Like if it's delivery, deliver it where the hell you want. Like why does it matter if it's a commercial public space or whatever? They're getting it delivered and they're more than likely going to take it to them somewhere else and, go back in their vehicle, go home. They're not going to just sit there at that place and consume it. Or say I work late, right? I get off, luckily here in Cruces, we don't have a lot of that issue, but say my favorite place I like going to, and the only place that has the product that I have. And I historically get off around 7:00 and they close at 6:30. The only way I can get my product is ordered around 5 and hopefully it shows up around 6, around the time, that they're about to close. But if I'm at work, let's say, I fucking work at Wendy's or something, I don't know. I can't get it, because, now they can't deliver it to my building. And if my boss is okay with it, if the owner's okay with it, then who gives a shit? Mm-hmm. And as long as, they're okay with it and they're more than likely taking it to their vehicle after getting it delivered and they're consuming it when they're getting home. This punishes the working people more than anything. Because if your boss is okay with it and, you're a patient, you're getting your medicine and you're just taking it to your vehicle afterwards for home use afterwards, why the hell not? Why are we doing this? We're going backwards with this. So, what are your thoughts?
I mean, it's just like you said, we're in a time, especially now, where like a lot of our fellow millennials cannot own, their own residence or, maybe they're in a place where, like you said, like they're doing what they can. So that really inhibits them, especially once again for and the people that I see that really take a hit from this is the disabled community. Yeah. Like plain and simple, they tried to do this with drive-throughs, and now it's just like another way that they're trying to just to make it harder for some people to get their medicine. Yeah. So it's ridiculous.
Yeah, this is ridiculous. So please get rid of this. This is dumb. Mm-hmm. Like I get the spirit behind it, but no, spirit's dead. Mm-hmm. But moving on, we're going to move on to our very last topic. I know this is probably a long episode. We're probably over an hour right now. So Gino's giving me the thumbs up. So I'll keep these last two ones really short. I do want to hear what you have to say on it though. But I'm going to give you guys the quick Texas legislative update right now. Ain't shit happening right now. So the Texas Democrats left Texas. Someone went to Illinois. Some went to other states too. And it looks like they're going to try to stay out of state until the end of the special session. The reason why they did that is because Texas needs quorum to do anything. So what that means is they don't have the numbers in their state legislative, chambers to pass any laws or anything. They need the 10 or 15 Democrats that left the state. If they don't have those Democrats coming back, they can't do anything. Now the governor's threatening them. They're getting threatened by, getting arrested, this and that. They're getting threatened of being removed from office. But the problem with that is they need quorum to remove people from office. So if they don't have that 2/3 majority there, then they can, because they need 2/3 majority to remove people from office. They need a supermajority. And so if they don't have that, then what's the point? And so they can't even get quorum. So this essentially is just a tactic that a lot of politicians use. I mean, this was used in Oregon for 6 years straight by the Republicans. It's been used by Democrats, Republicans, and every party alike on both sides. This isn't something new. And this is something that happens when a lot of politics get involved, of course. Now, the reason why they did this wasn't because of hemp, wasn't because of cannabis, wasn't because of the floods. This is because Donald Trump asked Texas to give him 5 more seats in Congress. And that's what we're told, right? But they're trying to redistrict right now in the middle of, usually it's 10 years when they redistrict. Right now we're in 5 years. They're doing it right in the middle of it. And they're trying to redistrict things in a weird way. Like I think parts of El Paso would be in a San Antonio representative or something like that.
It's so fucking dumb.
The weirdest thing. Yeah. Like it's going to be like Strata. And there's other people in Texas that are saying the same thing. Like my representative is going to be 7 hours from me. Well, what's that going to do for me? This makes no sense. Like, this isn't me being represented at all. This is gerrymandering.
Very much.
And so that's fair. So cannabis and hemp gets put on the side right here. I'll put the other politics aside for now, and get you guys back on track for the cannabis stuff and why it matters. So hemp and everything is put aside. Now, everyone wants to cheer, yay, but we're not at the woodwork. All that's going to happen is the governor's most likely, and I was talking to Gino about this before, and I agree with him, he's going to just call a special session again.
Yeah. And
we're just going to rinse, lather, repeat. And if they do pass this, we already have California talking about doing the same exact thing. So it's just going to be back and forth, back and forth. And to be honest, this is just a waste of time. Just to really appease politicians at the highest levels. And that's not right because your constituents suffer. And we should be calling all politicians out who do it. It's not right that Texas wants to do this, and it's not right that California wants to go back and do it, but they have every right to do it and retaliate in some way, I guess. And all this is going to do, every other state is going to end up doing it. Then, every other conservative state will do it, and then every liberal state will do it, and then we'll just end up with these weird districts in every single freaking state, and then I'll end up with a representative in like Taos, New Mexico.
And the only people that are going to suffer from this are us, the people.
Yeah.
Plain and simple.
Yeah, 100%. So that's unfortunate, but lucky for New Mexico right now because we get to continue our industry the way it is. Nothing changes. They're not legalizing anything in any way, and they're not making anything illegal because ain't shit happening. So I'll keep you guys updated what's happening with this. The advocates in Texas, of course, embracing for the worst, of course, and of course embracing for another session coming up too. We'll see if that happens because special sessions are very expensive to fund, and it's taxpayer funded. So keep that in mind. Every day in New Mexico, it costs over $1 million. So a state like Texas, you're probably talking millions of dollars every day, and you're paying those politicians on top of it. Because here we don't pay our politicians. Texas, you do. So not on top of that, you're paying them. So you're paying millions of dollars every day just for the special session. That's outside of the budget. So we'll see what happens. That's all that I have for you guys on this. I'm sure in the coming days we'll get more information. As this special session winds down, I'm sure we'll get information if a new session will come up or not. So what do you think about this real quick before we move on?
You hit everything on the head. I think the biggest thing that I do want to say is I commend the Democrats that are doing this. Because they're not thinking about themselves with seats, they're thinking about the people, which is what they were elected for. Yeah. And the way that I see it is, they're putting them, because these are federal charges and federal arrests that they are facing. And this is just something as big as, someone that's advocating for cannabis. So as an advocate, I commend them so much because they see my issues as well, my concerns, and I am on board with them. So all the power to them and all the support for sure.
Yeah. So more power to them. The only thing is that they're actually facing state charges and stuff. It's not federal.
Oh, it's not federal?
Yeah, they're state representatives. So the state was the one who tried to bring charges on him. But the thing about it, they hold no criminal charge, so they'll get arrested and then just brought back into the chamber, and then nothing happens to them. Gino has a caveat, and there's other stuff around it too. But yeah, it's more or less just like scare tactics and stuff like that.
I thought it was federal. That's probably what I heard then.
Yeah, they want to have the Texas Rangers leave the state to go get them, but then you're doing state line cross stuff and the states that they're in.
And that's what, is that why they're trying to make it? That's probably what I heard then. Maybe.
Yeah, they're trying other ways, of course. Every other way, and
for sure.
They're going to do what they want and do what they do. But that's just what's being told, right now. And of course, the threats being brought up. We'll see what actually happens and actually sticks. There's a difference between threatening and actually doing something. Sure. And in politics, all the time, they make a lot of threats, and then nothing happens afterwards. So that's all I have for that. We'll move on from the politics side of everything. That was pure politics because, that's Texas. The last thing I want to talk about, and this has to go back to that damn Delta 8 thing, hemp thing, and I hate talking about it, but you guys keep making me talk about it. The environmental department here in New Mexico created a emergency rule banning the manufacture of Delta 8 and all that stuff here in New Mexico for 180 days unless something else is enacted. They couldn't get it done during the legislative session, so now they're going through processes like this to do it. And now the environmental department has stated reasonings, of course, kids getting it, impacts to the environment, et cetera, being the reasons. But kids are getting it because there's a lack of regulation around certain products. We just need to create regulations around it instead of banning things. Now, the reason why I'm such a proponent for people being allowed to consume whatever makes them feel better is because I've talked to people that use the Delta 8s, the HHCs and O's that, have been synthesized, and they have found relief from it. Some of them, I don't know if this is just in their head or if it's a real thing or something, but they say they do not like the intensity of the cannabis that is out on the market today. And I could see where they're coming from. It's very high and very potent, all that good stuff. And it's not for everybody. This is a little more gentle on them, and some of them tell me that they don't get the same side effects that they get from regular cannabis. One of them being like the munchies, something simple. Like, I don't get the munchies with this at all. And I'm like, well, that's cool. Like if you're trying to medicate, but also watch your weight, I could see that being a benefit, and most people that use these Delta 8 products and everything, they're not using them like a regular cannabis user is anyway. They're using them more or less purely medicinal. Sure. So why would I want to gatekeep someone for using the medicine of their choice when I've been fighting for almost 20 years for people using the medicine of their choice? Then I start becoming a hypocrite. And then that's where I'm like, okay, industry, let's not become hypocrites and let's not start attacking the plant, because that's a slippery slope. Let's regulate things and just make sure the processes used are good for the environment and not harmful to people. That's it.
But this is also where education also comes into effect, because I would counteract that by saying if someone were to shop with me and didn't want that, I would recommend something with THCV. Yeah, because it's cannabis, but it's a cannabinoid that cuts hunger habits. So you're not having to use those synthetics and stuff like that. Not saying that I'm trying to defend it or anything like that, but it's just also knowing the education of which ways that you can also go to.
Yeah, exactly. And maybe they tried that and it just didn't work for them.
That too.
Or maybe vice versa. They tried Delta 8. Hey, maybe THC works for you now. And that's the important part of the education, especially behind the counter too. So that's all I had for you guys. If you have something to say about this, contact the environmental department. This is their rule. This did not come from the Cannabis Control Division. And we'll see what happens. Hemp is federally controlled. The state has little regulations really around it and everything. So anyway, that's all I have. Thank you, Adrian, so much for joining me, buddy. It was a fun time, great conversation. I appreciate your insights, man. And keep kicking ass out there, brother.
Thank you. I know I talk a lot.
We both do, so it's all right. We're probably like almost 2 hours in. So anyway, guys, I'll be back next week with another episode of Asj Chad Grassy Logic. I'll keep you updated what's going on. And make sure you show up for that damn rule hearing, because I'm gonna be kicking that horse until it's powder. All right, guys, we'll see you again next week. And all right, shoots.